The Iron Game Chalk Talk podcast is brought to you by the following sponsors: EliteForm.com, IgnitionAPG.com, PlayUSA at PLAEUSA.com, and Sorinex Exercise Equipment at Sorinex.com. And now, the Iron Game Chalk Talk podcast. Welcome to Iron Game Chalk Talk with your host, Ron McKeefery.
Every time our athletes walk into this weight room, they're going to be pushed to the max.
Let's go! Everything you got!
On this podcast, hear Coach McKeefery straight talk about training, featuring the top strength and conditioning professionals from around the world. And now, here's your host, Ron McKeefery.
Hey guys, welcome back to Iron Game Chalk Talk. I'm your host, Ron McKeefery, and this episode number 130. Super excited about our guest today. We have Jeremy Schwendeman and John Mele, both financial advisors with Morgan Stanley Wealth Management. They do a fantastic job. They're recommended to me through a mutual friend. I have no professional affiliation with them, but I wanted to have this topic. I wanted to talk about money management, especially this time of year when there's periods of transition, whether or not you're going to a new job or you've been let go from a job or something along those lines. And unfortunately, it's a part of what we signed up for, right? We chose this profession. We understand that there's these types of things. It stinks. Sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's negative, but it's a reality of the profession. So what I've found, having gone through both the positives and the negatives, has been that if you have things set up correctly at home, or you've done your work on the front end to make sure that you are accounted for in those periods of transition, then that stress that would normally accompany those periods of transition is still there, but it's mitigated a little bit. And so I wanted to have these guys on the show. Jeremy was a college football coach. He was a GA at Akron, I believe. John and both Jeremy work with NFL coaches, college coaches around the country, and we get into a ton of great topics on this. Just basically what you should be doing on the front end, what should you be doing during, what are the biggest pitfalls in your financial planning. And so there's not much. They can't go into too much depth in these topics in this platform, but they do offer at the end the opportunity to talk to them. You set up a financial plan for free, and then just have opportunities to discuss working with them. Like I said, I don't work with them. I don't get anything out of you doing that. But I just wanted to let you know, and I wanted to have this as a topic on the show. So before we do, I want to recognize our sponsor for this episode, PlayUSA. You guys all know Play's been with me from the beginning. I think the world of them as a company, as people. Had Rich Gray on the show, and we for those that know Rich, know Brett, know the rest of the company, Dave and Brittany and Judd and everybody, fantastic people, and Brett's done such a great job of putting together a great team, and so I wanted to just highlight them. I would encourage you to go to their website, check out their products. They got lots of great things going on right now. It's about that clinic time of season, so you'll definitely see them at the show. But when you do, please go up to them and let them know just how much you appreciate them sponsoring the show, continuing to bring it to you for free. Check out what they got. If you're in the market, there's not a better product. Hands down, we've had them in to basically put together a plan for us. I just couldn't recommend them more. So if you're in that market, definitely check them out. Worth a phone call, and more than likely, as you put it side by side, you'll understand why they're the best in the world. So check them out. As I mentioned, the conferences are coming up. I just registered for the 2016 Coaches Conference. I will be there. If you see me, please come up and say hi. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate you listening to this show, watching this show, participating, and it really is. It all stems from really just feeling an obligation to give back to a profession that's given to me so much, and I really enjoy talking to coaches. be prepared for me to ask you questions. I want to continue to make this show better, and I think it's just it's a fun time to get through there. So I am thinking about holding a impromptu Q&A session about CEO Strength Coach. I've gotten lots of questions, and rather than try to get to all of them through email and things like that, maybe just sitting down in a coffee shop or something and answering those questions. I'm speaking on that a couple times this year, so I'd love the research and finding ways that I can build on the things in the book, but would love the opportunity to sit down with you in that type of setting, answer your questions, and go from there. So if you're interested in that, shoot me a email or tweet or Facebook or whatever, and just let me know that that's something that you would like me to do, and I'll continue to work on it. So I want you to enjoy this episode. Sit back, take lots of notes, and we'll see you on the other side. All right, guys, super excited to have John Mele and Jeremy Schwendeman, right?
Yep,
Did I get that correct? With us today. And guys, this is a treat because this is outside of our strength and conditioning box that we typically have on the show, but such an important part of being in this business. And so both these guys are certified financial planners with the Clare group of Morgan Stanley Wealth Management up in the Baltimore area, and they come highly recommended to me from a good friend, Dennis Cornell, who's been on the show, and they work with elite athletes and entertainers and coaches around the country. And so I wanted to have them on the show just to talk about some of the things from that managerial standpoint, from that how to kind of make sure the home front is on point. And so, guys, I really appreciate you coming on the show, man.
Well, Ron, thanks for having us. We really appreciate it.
It's our pleasure.
And just to clarify, John's on the left on your screen and Jeremy's on the right. But guys, in that intro, I left out some gaps. Kind of go into, how more specifically, kind of how you came about working with coaches in your practice.
Okay, great. I'll go ahead and start.
Please.
So my background is I was a college football coach at the University of Akron in the Mid-American Conference. I was the offensive graduate assistant back in 2000 and 2001. So I had a great coaching staff that I coached with, and some great friends, and still my best friends that I still lean on today. I had the opportunity right out of graduate school to go to get a job at J.P. Morgan, which led me to different parts of the country, from Ohio to Michigan to Dallas to Baltimore to where I'm now at Morgan Stanley in the wealth management division. John and I work with about 50 to 60 coaches in college football, the NFL, and men's college basketball. And it really led from just my background as a college football coach, because what I found when I was talking with my friends and visiting them at AFCA and the NFL Combine and Senior Bowl, I found that a lot of them were seeking advice and needed advice, but didn't really have somebody that they could trust and call on. And just with our connection as a coach, as you know, Ron, coaches stick with coaches.
No doubt.
It really led to a lot of referrals and a lot of coaches coming to us. And I'll let John just share a little bit about his background, but that's really how it came about for me.
It's great.
Don't hold it against me, but I was a player in college, not a coach. And Jeremy and I, we've both been in the business about 12 years. And as fate would have it, I guess about 3 or 4 years ago, one of our colleagues mentioned to us that we were both traveling to the same events. We were both out at the Senior Bowl, the Combine, AFCA, seeing our coaching clients. And Jeremy and I got to talking, and it made a lot of sense for us to partner up, and now our team manages a little more than $500 million of our coaches and clients' assets. And having Jeremy on the team and to be a partner and understand the lifestyle and have the history in coaching has been a huge benefit to our practice. So I'm a Washington and Lee graduate. Again, don't hold that against me, but undefeated so far. Go Generals!
There you go.
Jeremy and I are pleased to announce that we are now a Morgan Stanley Global Sports and Entertainment Director team, which is an honor that our firm has given to less than 0.5% of the advisors at Morgan Stanley. So it really speaks to the hard work, the dedication, the effort that we put into not only growing but serving our coaching clientele. And so we're happy to be here today, Ron, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, I appreciate that, and it's cool because we got kind of both sides of the coin here. We got a former coach and somebody that was just introduced to the coaching world, and as you both know, it's really kind of unlike anything else, right? There's these challenges and these pressures that coaches face that your typical CEO may not face, and so John, kind of talk a little bit from your perspective, and then Jeremy yours about what was the introduction to working with coaches. What were some of the challenges that you saw these coaches facing that were maybe unique to that demographic?
Well, I would say big difference was from an executive standpoint versus a coach. An executive usually has a pretty long runway as far as how long they can expect to be with an employer. And with the coaching world, we know that the only thing that's constant is change. So making sure that the coaches had plans in place that allowed plenty of liquidity for the inevitable. Unfortunately, every couple of years we're dealing with some sort of transition. And not only giving the confidence to make sure that you can make it through those tough times, those transition times, but also not missing out on opportunities and being too conservative by holding too much cash. It's something that we run into with a lot of coaches that we work with. Some very successful coaches that have, quite frankly, been scared to invest any of their cash and have accumulated quite a bit of cash, and that cash has been sitting there earning nothing for years and years.
Right.
And you have that opportunity cost. So there's this balancing act of preparing for the inevitable change and making sure you have ample liquidity, but also saving enough and investing wisely so that your money's working and doing something for you to help propel you into the future and give you options down the road. So,
and just to elaborate on the liquidity thing, I think that's the number one pitfall I see with coaches, or we see with coaches, is the lack of liquidity. And it comes, I think, in two areas. And the two biggest areas are lack of liquidity as far as enough reserves in cash or liquid assets. And the other is lack of liquidity because of too much real estate exposure. Mm-hmm. So just to touch on the cash, we typically recommend a coach hold 12 months worth of reserves in some sort of liquid asset, whether it be cash, which unfortunately is paying zero today, or some sort of liquid short-term investment, and obviously we have solutions for that. But 12 months is to us the ideal benchmark, and some coaches on this call may not be at that point, but that should be a goal that they work towards. And I think that what that does is it provides a financial flexibility for that coach to take a step back from a pay standpoint, to maybe take a job just to kind of bridge that gap until they can get back on their trajectory, or sit out or do different avenues. But if you don't have the cash, you're kind of forced to take whatever the first thing that shows its opportunity.
Right.
And then on the real estate front, so many coaches think that renting is a bad deal. They think, if I rent, I'm paying my money to a landlord. And in this profession, there's a value in liquidity. And so, though I would never say that owning is necessarily a bad decision, but I think the hard look should be made towards renting, to be able to have a month-to-month or a yearly lease or something that you can walk away without needing to list your home, sell it, pay a real estate commission. You're paying property taxes whether you own it or not. You've got to pay homeowners insurance. You've got maintenance, etc. So there's a true cost of owning, and that lack of liquidity certainly gets coaches in different jams. So that's just a comment on the liquidity front.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And a great book that I've recommended is Dave Ramsey's financial. What's the name of it? Escape me now. But Dave Ramsey's got a couple great books, and one of it he's talking about that emergency fund. Getting the $2,000 first, and then getting to 3 to 6 months, and then getting to a year. And setting smaller chunks and setting goals. So you're right. You might not be at that point where you can just put 12 months in the bank, but putting 2,000 in, and then putting a month in and 2 months in, and really working towards that. That's just great general practices for coaches, and because like you said, it's inevitable. It's not if, it's when. you know, and you mentioned a couple, you know, kind of things that strength coaches should think about. What are some typical mistakes that you've seen made? You know, I'm sure you've had the clients that come to you when they're taking on, you know, money, but you're also coming to the ones that are after the fact and they're trying to figure out how to manage that money, you know, while maybe in a state of transition, you know. And so what are some of the mistakes that you've seen where if you just would have addressed this on the front end, you would be in a little bit better position?
Sure. So one of the things that, you know, and we're speaking to strength coaches today, and there's no better audience of coaches to speak to on this, and that is we recommend clients when they engage us for the very first time and to go, you know, build a financial plan, and that is simply, you know, it's not as cumbersome as many may think, but it's simply establishing where do you stand today, your current financial picture, and making assumptions out into the future. Again, we're making assumptions, and so those assumptions change based on job situations, but establishing a benchmark. And these coaches, you know, these strength coaches, you know this today because that's what you do when a freshman walks into your weight room for the very first time. You are setting his benchmark or her, or, you know, or this athlete's benchmark. You know, working, you know, and then you're developing a customized workout plan for that athlete. Same with the financial plan. We customize all of our financial plans and recommendations based on that coach's situation. There may be an athlete who gets injured his sophomore year. He tears a rotator cuff. Well, certainly you can't do certain exercises with that, so you have to customize and adjust your plan. We do the same thing on the financial planning. You may be coaching at, you know, a BCS or an SEC school with a higher compensation structure, and you may take a year and take a lower compensation structure at a different school. So we've got to customize or adjust that plan to modify going forward. So you asked, you know, what are some things coaches can do on the front end? I think just sitting down and establishing a financial plan where you've got true goals that you're reaching for, an action plan on reaching those. And again, there's assumptions, so assumptions change, but having a team of specialists or a team that are advocates in your corner to help you modify that plan going forward, I think is by far the most important thing that we can do as advisors for these coaches to simplify their life and, you know, lay some things out for them going forward.
Sure.
And Jeremy's covered a lot of the important points. And Ron, prior to this call, we spoke of something really important, which is allowing coaches to focus on what they need to focus on and not be distracted by outside influences, so that you can perform at your highest level and do the best job you can do. And what I find with these plans is that even if somebody's completely on track, by having a formalized plan and knowing the results, it gives you great peace of mind to be able to move forward and do what you need to do and perform the way that you need to perform to accomplish your career goals. So either you're on track and it gives you peace of mind, or you're not on track and it gives you guidance of what you need to do to get from point A to point B. Either way, it gives you clarity and it helps you do your job better. Only other thing I might add, just in terms of liquidity, going back to some of the comments Jeremy made on real estate, it also applies to insurance products. We've worked with a lot of coaches that have come to us after they've worked with other advisors, and they've allowed us to review all of their investments that they have. And we've seen a lot of coaches that have been socking a lot of money away in different types of insurance products that don't have the type of liquidity that we would like to see. So I would just say be careful. Know the type of investments, every single investment that you own, and the liquidity provisions around it, because in this line of work, you need to be able to access your money quickly from time to time and know that it'll be there without a big penalty, should the need arise. So that's just one other element to add on the heels of the real estate conversation.
Well, I think, it's one of those things where you're dealing with coaches, and coaches have egos, right? And you want to be able to kind of handle all those things. Or sometimes, if you're like me, honestly, most of the time I have no idea what I make. I just give it to my wife. My wife handles it, and I know the bills get paid, right? But it's there's strength, just like we preach every single day. There's strength in knowing that we don't know it all, and finding the experts in those niches to help us maximize what we have, and that's what you guys offer on a daily basis. For the guys that what's a poor man's version of a financial plan? What are the components that you really need to get a handle on to really be able to have a snapshot of where you're at financially as a family?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what we typically do is we typically schedule block off a time of 30 minutes to an hour, depending on the length of time with the coach. But really, the coach just needs to gather their current financial assets. So, financial assets being TIA, CREF, or their 403B through their university, or or the CAP plan through the National Football League. Any kind of pensions, any kind of assets, IRAs, savings accounts, etc. So, gathering the financial assets, then having a conversation as far as cash flow. What does your budget look like? At the end of the month, are you positive cash flow? Yes, I've got $500 a month extra conservatively, or I'm negative. And identifying what's your cash flow look like. What does your liability side of the sheet look like? Well, I've got a mortgage, got some credit cards, I've got some student loans I'm still paying on. Whatever the case might be, what's the asset side, liability side. And then where are we trying to get to? I'm a 35-year-old coach. I want to coach for the next 30 years. I envision, having X amount of dollars and, or needing X amount of income. And we build that plan and say, okay, well, here's what your savings rate needs to be. Here's, based on this assumed rate of return, here's where, here's your number. Here's the number we need to get to satisfy this, this ending, income needs. So really from a basic standpoint, copies of asset statements, liability statements, and time to have a 30 to 40 minute conversation, filling in the gaps, identifying goals, and building out that plan. And really most of the work falls on John and I and our team to build that, and then we present it to the coach, and we take the action steps based on that going forward.
You mentioned earlier, liquidity and things, having assets in place that you're able to grab if you need it. So I'm thinking like retirement. It's something that you don't want it to be liquid, but if it had to be, you have the ability to pull that out from time to time. I know with my staff, we talked about this off camera a little bit. One of the things that I always talk about with young assistants is making sure that they're maxing their employee matching for retirement. What are some other liquid type investments that you can make as a coach that maybe we're not thinking about?
Sure.
Yeah, so the liquid type savings that we typically work with our coaches are actually outside of retirement, because with retirement, many of the liquidity options have strings attached. You either have a penalty because you're under age 59 and a half and you have to pay Uncle Sam 10%, or you have to pay taxes on the whole amount that you withdraw. That withdrawal could end up bumping you into a higher bracket.
Right.
If you take a loan against a retirement plan, there's an interest rate associated with that loan. So there's strings attached. With our coaches and with our clients that are non-coaches, likewise, we try and stress the importance of building an after-tax investment account. And that after-tax investment account can be invested as conservatively or as aggressively as is appropriate for the client. But that type of portfolio can be accessed for anything, regardless of age, need. There's not penalties associated with that type of portfolio. And the other cool thing is that depending on the size of the portfolio, typically at $200,000 or above, we're then able to create a liquidity line or a line of credit against that portfolio. So if we had a coach recently go from an SEC school to the NFL this past offseason, and he had to move quickly. So he was able to utilize the line of credit against his portfolio to access money for a down payment to get him where he needed to be in the new city. And that money that was invested for him was able to be continue to be invested without being touched and without triggering taxes and without the opportunity cost of pulling it out. So after-tax liquid investments are important, and depending on the client's needs, we either implement ETFs, exchange-traded funds, mutual funds, individual stocks, bonds, etc. It depends on the client's needs and the level of the assets we're dealing with. But we just like that because there's no strings attached, and you can use it for anything that comes up in your life.
Sure.
Anything that?
The only thing I would add to it is, John mentioned, it not only works for coaches, but it works for our executives and other clients. Is we set up, once we've established that plan and we go through that process and we say, okay, we've identified that $500 a month or $1,000 or $1,500 a month, whatever the number is your monthly positive cash flow. After you've contributed to your retirement, paid all your bills, had a little bit extra spending money to go out to dinner with the family and spend time and pay some, some other bills. What's that monthly, positive number? And back to your comment about Dave Ramsey, is setting up a monthly reoccurring investment plan that comes to Morgan Stanley that we invest, whether it's conservative, aggressive, moderate, wherever that may be, but it's liquid and available for you in the time of need. Hey, I'm leaving whatever university, I'm going to another school. We need a little bit of money for moving expenses, etc. We move it right to their bank account, and it can be used in a time of liquidity. It's just not in their bank account earning zero. It's in some sort of asset that may be growing at a higher rate of return.
Right. Just as you, as being a former coach and dealing with coaches, I think there's something, culture and mindset is an incredible piece, right? And so I think the generality is that most coaches don't feel like they can really go to a financial advisor until they have money. But the reality is somebody that's making $30,000 a year probably needs the direction more, Talk a little bit about kind of creating the mindset to where, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to, because a lot of times I spoke at a conference, a few years back, national conference, 500 plus coaches in the room and whatnot. And I had everybody stand up and I said, hey, look, sit down if you have gone into debt chasing this profession. And pretty much the entire room sat down, and so that's embarrassing to some, but it's just like meeting athletes where they're at and letting them know where their strengths and their deficiencies are. That's when you can take those steps forward. But I would imagine you guys have to do a similar type approach. You have to say, hey, look, it's not a judging. It's just, this is the state of the union. Right. These are the things that we're doing well. These are the things that we need to work on. Talk about how that psychology of getting, families, because it's not just husbands, or sure, wives, it's their spouse that sometimes have the issue of putting it all out there, and being kind of feel like they're being judged.
Sure. Having worked with coaches for as long as we have, we've seen the coach that started at the smaller school that moved their way up to a bigger school and started with a small account balance, and now have been able to save significantly more than they were on day one, and have now followed that plan. We've analyzed the plan with them yearly or every couple of years once there's been a change in their lifestyle, and they've stuck, they've stayed on track and have gotten there, but they weren't intimidated to enter in the process on day one, which I think is really, as you mentioned, it's the ego thing. And, it's not just coaches, but it's all individuals. It's men, I think, more so than any, than the women. But it's just saying, okay, I'm coaching football not 40 hours a week, 60 and 70 hours a week, and the rest of the time I'm dedicating to my family. Nobody else is watching this for me. And just saying, okay, I'm going to get a team to manage this money for me and lay this out. And the surveys that we've read, that are issued by our firm to some of the high net worth clients that we serve, I can't remember the exact percentages, but a large percentage said, I wish we would have started with a financial planner sooner than we ever did. Right. And these are 60 and 70-year-old, pre-retirees or retirees saying, I wish we had done it sooner. So, my call to action to anyone on this call is, just take that step. Build a benchmark, build a plan, find out where you stand today, and see how the numbers lay out. And if it's something that we can work towards, it would be great. But don't let the ego of waiting until you have money to decide you need a planner or a process. You need it regardless of where you are in the process, because things change, good and bad, in this profession, and right. you need to have a plan.
John, I'm sure you could probably touch on this, but let's say I'm sure you guys would say everybody needs a financial planner. And I agree with that 100%. At what point do you feel like it's really necessary to have that person? Is it necessary to, when you're a graduate assistant like you were at Akron, or when you've made it to SEC and you're kind of, now you got some money to invest, at what point should a coach say, you know what, I'm going to reach out to John and Jeremy and get something going?
Sure. So unless you disagree, I think it's important at every stage throughout the career cycle, because speaking of studies, like Jeremy just referenced a study that we did at Morgan Stanley, one that I will never forget. We went out and we polled all the different client segments that we have. Clients with 50,000, 500,000, 5 million, 50 million, 500 million. I mean, Morgan Stanley works with some of the wealthiest people in the world. So they went all the way up. And what they found was that there was no difference between what people worried about, whether you had $50,000 or $50 million. Everyone worried that they didn't have enough because they felt like the people they surrounded themselves with had more than them, that they weren't doing as well as everyone else. Mm-hmm. So as you go up the food chain, so to speak, financially, even though the actual challenges and hurdles vary, certainly they do, everyone always feels like you're not doing as well as you should have been, or you don't have as much, because if you have $10 million, you're hanging out with people with $20 million.
Right.
So it goes back to, regardless of where you are in that life cycle of a coach, there are unique challenges to a GA that might be racking up credit card debt. And simple, smart decisions about what is good debt and what is bad debt are things that we can help with through the planning process. To a coach that goes from college to the NFL and needs to better understand the cap plan and how that works. To coaches that are going up for head coaching jobs, and helping to talk about negotiating different retirement benefits as part of their compensation package with the university. So It's important at every stage, and quite frankly, our largest clients that we work with right now are people that we started with when nobody else cared about them. When we're at the beginning of their career and we treated them right and grew up with them, and now there's no question who handles their money now that they're at the top of their the peak of their career. So we're happy to do it. We don't have an ego about it. I know there's a lot of planners and advisors that might only work with a certain minimum asset level, but we believe in helping people, and that in time everything works out if you do right by people.
Jeremy, I think the cynic or the concern that maybe some of the coaches would have would be, okay, well, what's in it for Jeremy and John to work with me if I'm making $30,000 a year and I have $100 in the savings account right now? Where's their benefit in working with me, and how are they gonna, why is their time valuable? Why is my, working with me? Why is that time valuable to them?
Sure. From me having been a college football coach and just knowing the fraternity that it is, and knowing that, again, the guys that I was locked in a windowless, dark room watching film from 5 a.m. till, 8 p.m. And, my best friends still to this day that attended my wedding, that I attended their wedding, etc. Coaches have a big place in my heart. So that's first and foremost. And it's a tight fraternity, and everybody talks, and we want to do the right thing for anyone, because we don't know who they're talking to or what they're going to become someday. We hope everyone on this call becomes a head strength and conditioning coach if that's their desire, end game. So at some point you're going to get to the top of your goal, and so we want to be there along that process. So just talking about what's in it for us. So we begin with a financial plan that is completely complimentary, and there's no charge to do that. Okay, and what our hope is that we do a good enough job identifying opportunities and weaknesses or threats to the to the coach and his family, and in hopes that they'll engage us in the future from the standpoint of portfolio management and consolidation and simplification of their lives. So it's really a longer term process that we're working towards versus a short term fix, so to speak. I hope that answers that.
No, that's perfect. No, I wouldn't expect anything less. You mentioned tax. With head coaches kind of going in with benefits and having kind of some negotiating power on the front end, maybe some on the back end. I talk with my staff a lot about plugging leaks and creating multiple streams of income. Those are the two things. And so plugging leaks are maybe some of those, things during tax time to kind of, as a college coach or as a strength coach, you maybe have some, there's some deductions or something that you can take based on that. What are some things on the front end from, make sure that you're doing this, and some things on the back end, maybe a tax standpoint, that coaches should be doing?
Maybe this is the front end and the back end, but I think it's important to have a team approach. So if you have a great financial planner and a great accountant or tax advisor, and they don't know who the other person is, you're missing out in one way, shape, or form. The best results that happen for clients are when the professional advisors that surround them collaborate and communicate. So that's something that I think, I would recommend, regardless of, again, the stage of the career that a particular coach is in right now. If your advisors are not communicating and collaborating, you're not getting the max benefit for the people that are surrounding you and serving you.
No, I couldn't agree more. With that, I don't have much more to offer on that.
Sure. What about something that you mentioned earlier in the episode, with relocation and renting versus owning and things along those lines? What about just some general tips, when you're relocating, some things that maybe will save you money or will lessen the burden a little bit as you're going through that process?
Sure. One thing that I think is unique about Morgan Stanley, and for us that has really helped a lot of our coaches through this process is we, being one of the largest wealth management firms in the world, we have a private bank within within our complex that we can rely on to pre-qualify our coaches for new mortgages if they so choose. We have banking solutions for them. We've got liquidity lines of credit for those bridge loans. They may, John mentioned a coach that left one school and went to the NFL, and his home was going to sell and close 3 weeks after his new home was closing. So he borrowed a line of credit, paid interest for 3 months, or 3 weeks, excuse me. And then when his home sold, he paid off his line of credit, and there was no harm, no foul, and it was a perfect situation. So again, having a team, whether it be you may have your own mortgage broker or others that are available to you, but having a team of accountants, financial advisors that you can be the first call. We get a lot of calls. We're sometimes the first people to know when a coach is leaving before it even hits the news and says, hey, Ron's taking another coaching job. What do we need to do to get organized? And we're looking at this area. How much liquidity do we have? What kind of options do we have? Should we own? Should we rent? It just really is relying on your team to help guide you through that process.
Great. Well, guys, we kind of end the show with some resources here. So give us the best piece of advice maybe you received when, with dealing with coaches.
I'll maybe flip the script a little bit. It's understand the importance of a coach's wife. In many cases, when our coaches are married, a coach's wife is a very unique individual, and a relationship between a coach and their wife and their family is very, very unique. And the reality is that many of the coaches that we deal with, we will see them either on the campus or the facility, but once or twice a year at the Combine, the Senior Bowl, we'll spend good quality time with them. And they know beyond that, day to day, we're working primarily with their spouse.
Right.
So for us, understanding the importance of the other people in the coach's life and who you'll be dealing with day to day, and treating them with respect and dignity is an important way that we distinguish ourselves. We understand how the family unit works in the coaching world. So
sure. I think that's a great point. And during the season, Ron, you know how busy your schedule is, and you mentioned, you made the comment, and if I had $1 for every coach that said this, I don't even know how much money I make. I just turn it over to my spouse, and she takes care of everything. We hear that all the time, and it's really, the coaches that are on this call, if we can just, have the conversation, bring your spouse in to have that conversation. And that's who we work with probably 10 months out of the year, because the other 2 months, that's about the only time that you can come up for air and really have an engaging conversation. So.
Sure. What about let's get a book, an app, and a website recommendation. So for example, something along the lines like we use Mint.com. I don't know where your position's on that, but is there anything like that, tools that you would recommend coaches start to get a handle of where their money's going?
Sure. I think this again is the Morgan Stanley side of things, but we have have a piece called OneView. Okay, it's a Morgan Stanley piece that allows our coaches to link all their outside assets up to OneView, and it's very similar to Mint. It pulls the data from the outside accounts, updates it daily, gives you a net worth snapshot, and gives you your financial picture. What's nice for John and I is OneView links right into John and I's desktop. So Ron, you call me up and you say, "Hey, Jeremy, I want you to take a look at my TIA CREF here at the university. I want to know, am I positioned exactly how I should?" We can look right into your OneView account and say, I think you're a little heavy international, a little heavy in emerging markets. Maybe we should shuffle a little bit over to small cap or mid cap U.S. stocks. Mm-hmm. And you can adjust those. And it's not a matter of sending us statements or logging in, because coaches, that's another thing, is they forget their login account numbers and things like that. So it allows us to see it. But again, going back to the financial plan, once we've established that financial plan and the OneView assets are fed up into it, you get a real-time look at your financial plan from So Ron, you call me up 3 years from now and you say, "Jeremy, hey, I'm looking, or we've been let go, or something's changed in my life. What does that do to my financial plan?" It's done. It's in front of us. We can say, okay, we've got these assets coming in here. We've got this. Here's your net worth. This is what it looks like. Here's the cause and effect of whatever that decision may be that's going on. So
right.
our Mint is the OneView.
Sure. A book or an app that you guys recommend?
This is going to sound like a Morgan Stanley commercial, but our app, we have an app for the iPhone and the Android that I'll tell you quite frankly, our firm has spent a lot of time, money, and resources on developing our technology to make it the best out there. So I use it all the time. I can deposit checks by taking a picture of checks. I can see my accounts 24/7, see what the top 5 things that helped my account that day were, see what the top 5 things that hurt my account the worst on that day were. We have great technology that allows people to drill down wherever they have 2 seconds to look at their accounts and see what's going on. Mm-hmm. Move money between accounts, etc. So, working with us, it's been something that we think is important because our clients are busy. They're crunched for time, so they need to be able to access things securely, quickly, and get something out of it. So we've put a lot into the technology that we offer, our clients in that way.
Great. Yeah. Well, guys, man, I appreciate you coming on. I mean, obviously, this is just a start of a discussion, in terms of this, and some of the things you mentioned, small cap and international and things like. I bet people are, they're having a hard time figuring out where that's exactly going in their own portfolios. But I think the big takeaway, at least for me, is, just like we wouldn't say, come in and any coach can coach any position, or a strength coach can, a personal trainer can come do a strength coach's job or something along those lines. I think it's the same thing, the same approach. You really need to kind of, you need to find people in your life that have more knowledge and a skill set that you do, and really reach out to them. And you guys have been great. I mean, you said that the financial plan part of it is just a phone call with you guys, and that's usually complimentary. And then from there, then it's being able to show kind of how Morgan Stanley can really help benefit you. Where would you recommend coaches go if they want to get in touch with you guys about maybe something like that up? Yeah,
just call our office. We're based in Baltimore, but we've got clients nationwide. So it's, regardless of where the coaches are located, please call us. I've got a conference call later on this afternoon with not a coach, but a client in California. So, we make things work. To to call our office, you can call my direct line. Again, my name is Jeremy Schwendeman, and my phone number is 410-736-5408. And we'd be happy to talk with you and take those next steps or answer any questions as a follow-up to this call.
Guys, that's great, man. Well, I appreciate you guys coming on. Thanks so much.
Our pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Ron, thank you.
That's it for this episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk. Thanks to this week's guest as well as our sponsors for bringing this episode to you for free. Make sure to check out ronmckeefery.com where you can join our mailing list, find the show notes, including all the links and resources mentioned, and information about Coach McKeefery's other products. While you are there, please join Coach McKeefery in the comments section thanking our guest for sharing. If you haven't subscribed to Iron Game Chalk Talk on YouTube or iTunes yet, make sure to do so. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome. Coach McKeefery can be found on Twitter at @RMcKeefery, on Facebook and YouTube at /Ron.McKeefery. That's it for this week. Be sure to check back next week for another great episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk.